Coming to you from Brick House in downtown Brooklyn, this is 112BK. On the show today, contending with child homelessness in the city as that population grows, and a conversation starter in the form of poetry about male survivors of sexual abuse. Hi, I'm Ross Tuttle, filling in for Ashley Ford, who's out with the flu. Ashley, we warned you warned you on this show. The flu season's not over. We'll get well soon, we miss you. But I am joined today with BRIC TV senior producer Ro Johnson to talk about an eventful week and weekend, both in the city, at BRIC, and in the borough. Let's start hyper local within these walls. You guys won some awards at the Emmys.
We won some New York Emmy awards. So the first one, I guess, would be our former director of photography, our DP, Chris Raditz, covering the Brooklyn Slam poetry team. And he won in the category of arts. We also won in the category of entertainment program, feature, or segment, Bed-Stuy Veterans and the Evolution of BRICTV. And that was Charlie Hoxie, our senior producer, and Yasha Callback. And so one of the ones that I was part of this team and I'm very excited about is the category in education or schools, program or special. And it was a class divide, breaking the pattern of school segregation. It was a Be Heard town hall. These incredible town halls are produced by Megan Donis, who is our editorial director and Be Heard executive producer. The last one for BRIC TV was in the category of societal concerns. And Steve DeSev, who sometimes works on this show, but he's all around, all about town with BRIC TV. He did a piece, a cop watcher's tale, El Grito de Sunset, and then Brooklyn Free Speech also got one for their media share program. It was a very exciting weekend. We partied hard, and we were all very proud of the entire team.
And if people want to see any of these, they can go on the BRIC TV website to check them all out. I recommend they do that. So let's talk about what's going on in local politics. I was going to talk about national politics, but I don't want to talk about Trump. I don't want to talk about Comey. I don't want to talk about P-tapes or P-brains.
Okay.
But so Cynthia Nixon was endorsed this weekend,
by
the Saturday,
the Working Families Party.
By the Working Families Party, which is a big deal, right?
It is.
So what have you read about that?
I've read a lot, and it's interesting. I would think that this is possibly the worst case scenario for Cuomo. I think he will probably win the primary.
Right.
You know, there are parts of upstate and western New York that are just far less progressive than some of the, more urban centered areas. But if that's a line on the ballot, it could cannibalize the left vote.
Come the general election.
Yes.
If she stays on the ballot.
If she stays on the ballot.
General election, right?
Yeah.
And it could open the door for the Republican challenger, who we're not even sure who that might be yet.
Definitely.
And also there was another development that seems somewhat related, which was the IDC, the Independent Democratic Conference, which we've talked about a lot on this show, finally decided again that they're going to reintegrate with the Democrats and caucus with the Democrats. They're the ones, of course, who have been caucusing with the Republicans, even though they've been elected as Democrats, giving the Republicans the legislative majority. But now they're reintegrating, which is, okay, that's news, but are they really going to do it? And why are they doing this now? Is this...
I'm not sure that they're definitely going to do this. There's a lot of perks that come along with being in the IDC. There's a lot more money. There's a lot bigger staffs for the people who are part of the IDC. So I don't know if they're going to be willing to give that up. Strategically, Cuomo is the one that pushed this when Cynthia Nixon announced her run, and it would benefit him to unite the party, especially, and to be perceived as more progressive than he has been in the past. He's been considered more of a centrist.
So he's trying to steal a bit of her thunder. I guess we'll see how that plays out. I just want to talk about one final thing before we go. This tragic death this weekend in Park Slope. Terrible, tragic news of this the LGBTQ rights lawyer, David Buckle, who was also an environmental activist who self-immolated in Prospect Park on Saturday morning, early in the morning, leaving a letter saying basically he was despondent over the direction that we're going as far with regard to environmental conservation, that people aren't making the sacrifices that we need to be making, and he made the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah. It's really disheartening, especially he was someone who was in power to make change. You know, he was a fierce advocate for LGBTQ rights. He was a legal advocate for environmental rights. So he was somebody that was on the forefront of change, and I hope his memory, you know, goes towards making those changes. His family, I think in the New York Times, his family is quoted as saying he was, you know, really distraught over the overall state of politics, and I think it can wear on us with such in such a contentious environment.
Right. I think he wanted this to be a statement to really energize people to say, listen, we've got to do something now. Yeah. And this was his, I guess, final and very emphatic and very tragic statement. We gotta end it there, Ro. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing the news about this awards. We'll have you back. And so stay tuned for our upcoming segments on the show today. We have an organization that seeks to empower homeless children in the city, and a musician and author will talk about his book of poems that addresses masculinity and the trauma from sexual abuse. Stay tuned. Approximately 24,000 kids will spend tonight in a New York City homeless shelter. Many other children without permanent housing sleep in cars, hotels, or sofas of friends and extended family. When they wake up, they have to find their way to school. They face stigma, trauma, and uncertainty. Our next guest runs an organization dedicated to enriching the lives of these individuals. She's the executive director of Dare to Be. We invited her on the show to tell us about this largely unseen and underserved community. Roxana Colorado, thanks for coming on 112BK.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So tell me about Dare to Be. What is it, and how did it come about?
Dare to Be is an all-volunteer organization dedicated to equipping and empowering homeless children to break their own cycle of poverty. Mm-hmm. And it started just through our own experiences, seeing the disparity of children between low income, and it was just realizing the kind of homelessness that did exist, that it wasn't what everyone envisioned, which was lazy people or drug addicts, that there were families behind it all. Right. And we started with just a Thanksgiving event, and it just morphed. We started partnering with great organizations and just educating ourselves more on it. And we really wanted to use our network. I came from a corporate background, so it was really influential people that wanted to do something good and just make a significant impact.
So how did you first get that window into this community? Where were you first seeing it? Where were you first coming across these kids who are in this situation?
It started with a program in New York Cares. I volunteered with them for a holiday event, and we saw just children coming in. I was used to going to soup kitchens where I saw adults, and then I saw these families come in, and it was just a really depressing experience. And I was like, wow, there's this? And we just sought out to get more educated, so we started partnering with organizations in the Bronx and Brooklyn. Wow,
so the numbers are pretty shocking. I saw an article that said last year, it was a statistic that about 1 in 10 students in the city had spent time in temporary housing during that school year. Nearly 24,000 every night spend time in a shelter. This is a population that's unseen. We don't really recognize it, like you said, until maybe they come into a shelter. Tell me about the breadth of this problem and this issue.
It's really huge. So, like you said, you have about 24,000 sleeping in New York City shelters tonight, but you have 100,000 homeless children enrolled in New York City schools. Wow. So, really? Because right now, those statistics are just children sleeping in municipal shelters. But like you mentioned earlier, they're scattered everywhere. Doubled-up housing, which means they're living with family members or friends. It could be 8, 10 people living in one-bedroom apartment.
Right. So maybe can you define homelessness? Because maybe that's where we get into these numbers and get a better understanding for what it means to either live in temporary housing, be without a home, be, in a...
So it starts in different ways. So the typical homelessness that people understand are the ones in the streets, the ones that you see, which are very different. Then you have the ones that are in motel units. Motel units are just where people go to temporarily. You have also the situations where there may be a domestic violence situation and they're put into these temporary shelters. Then separately, you have transitional housing, which is where we work in. Transitional housing allows us to work longer term with children versus motels where they may be there 1 night, 1 week. Transitional housing is meant for the families to stay at least 1 year. Wow. So that allows us to do a full developmental program with the kids for at least a year. But in reality, these kids are there for 2 years, 3 years. A group of our kids that just finally left last year were there for about 4 or 5 years. Right. So it's for really long periods of time.
I remember when I first started hearing about this issue and started to think about the number of kids who were enrolled in city schools who were coming from temporary housing and from shelters and places like that, and thinking about the sort of the unimaginable challenges that they face. I remember hearing something about, going back and how do they find a quiet space to do their homework. I mean, what kinds of things have you encountered, or are you seeing in your work?
So a big thing that people don't realize about homeless children is that they're at a huge disadvantage. So first of all, they're going through so much bureaucracy. So in general, homeless children are missing out 20 days of school.
Wow.
In general, just because
20 days of school year.
20 days, yep, in the school year. And that's because they're actually required to attend the meetings that they have to go through in order to apply for housing.
Even
for temporary
required
shelter.
to attend the meetings with their parents?
Yes.
Or if they're not with their parents? Are there some instances where they're not with their parents?
They have to go with their parents. So the parent can apply for things without the child being there, which is really crazy when you think about it. Like, these kids need to be in school.
Right.
But they have to go through this whole bureaucracy. So a parent could go from one place to the next trying to apply for some sort of support. They'll have to apply more than once, sometimes 3 times, to be able to get into a temporary housing, the transitional homes that we work in.
Do you know, is it because they just need to prove that they have these kids, if they're trying to get services for their entire family, that the city wants to see a demonstration that they indeed have a family?
We're still being educated on that piece, but my understanding is that things aren't streamlined. We're overpopulated, there's not enough housing, and things aren't streamlined at all. They're going to one place, the information is not up to date.
Right.
So we've worked to try to update information. So like on our website, we've updated the information to this is what you actually need to go somewhere. But it makes it really tough for people just because they don't have the right information. So that alone is a big issue. But it's just, then you have on top of that the kids are losing more school days because they're also being suspended. They're going through so much bureaucracy. They deal with so many different people. In the shelter alone, the children are known by number and not by name.
Wow.
So that creates an identity issue as well.
So being suspended because of discipline issues.
Right. Because now they're going through so much change. They've been uprooted. They were moved from their neighborhood where they had their friends, their family, and now they're in new locations where they don't know anyone. Some of the kids are being bullied.
But you would guess the school administrators would know the status of these students. Is there any sort of special consideration for them because of what they're going through in the schools?
Technically, they're not supposed to know which children are homeless so that they're not stereotyped. But in the cases that they do know, the teachers do try to help. But it becomes very challenging because there's only so much you could do. As it is, teachers are already having to put out their own pockets to help with children with school.
Right.
So, and some of the schools don't have the capacity to handle it. Some of the schools have a lot more homeless children than other schools do. So it becomes just like a big numbers issue, and do we have enough resources to cater to this one child?
Right.
There's also a big disconnect between the children going from one school to the next, because when they move, they lose their school as well, because now it may be too far. Some parents try to keep them in it, but it's not possible all the time.
I mean, so talk to me about the age range of these kids. It was about, that you work with, about 4 to 15 years? Is that,
right. Okay. So our age group is 5 to 17, but ideally most of our kids have been 4 to 15.
Wow. I have a 4-year-old who is always asking for play dates with his classmates. He's at pre-K right now. And I can only imagine a child who can't invite another child home to play with him. It's heartbreaking.
Making friends is really one of the biggest issues with our kids, which is why they appreciate the Dare to Be programs, because we build community within the shelters. The shelters are very individualistic. People are afraid, as you could imagine, right? They're in the system. They have curfews that they have to abide by. And all the children are going through changes. A lot of children are angry. The parents are going through frustrations. So through the programs, they get to make friends.
Right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what Dare to Be is doing in the shelters and with this community.
So we create a 7-step program that covers from equipping children with the basic needs, such as their winter apparel. You know, New York Cares will donate coats, but then they have no scarves or anything else to keep them warm. But as well as school supplies, there's great programs, say for example, Operation Backpack. They give them great starter packs, but then what happens to the kids the rest of the year? It's not sustainable. So we give them these opportunities. We also do academic enrichment, helping them, guide them through their schoolwork. On top of that, we also have the career development piece, which as early as people think that just because they're young, they don't need to be trained this early. But it's amazing, like when they start learning about career opportunities, when they go to TV stations or like this weekend we went to a pizzeria and they learned about entrepreneurship and owning a pizzeria and all the behind the scenes. It gives them the opportunity to see that they don't just have to amount to be what they see, YouTube stars or, you know, whatever social media is driving at the point, or celebrities, baking, celebrity shows like bakers or anything like that. So,
well, is it too early, or can you tell us about any success stories that you guys have had?
it's amazing. One of our most incredible stories is we had a 12-year-old who had been with us for a while. So when he turned 14, he got into the career development piece where he learned about work ethics, interview skills, and all that great stuff. And we ended up going to a career tour with the Statue of Liberty, and he got a job there.
Oh, wow.
And so they gave him a summer job along with one of our other kids. And in that summer job, it went from 2 weeks, they extended it to 6 weeks, then 8 weeks. They were just so impressed with their work ethics.
Oh, wow.
And then they ended up opening a full-time opportunity where they were able to share it and do it part-time until they graduated.
Wow, that's amazing.
And that was huge because not only was it amazing for them thinking that they didn't have this opportunity, but then it influenced the parents and the siblings to step it up as well. And that was just amazing. And thanks to his extra income, they were able to finally move out the shelter.
Oh, wow, fantastic. Well, so in the very short time that we have left, can you tell me what can people do who may want to get involved, who might want to volunteer, donate, contribute in whatever way to Dare to Be? What do they do? What kind of possibilities are there for them?
Dare to Be is in an exciting phase where we're finally expanding. We're looking to get into more shelters. We're in 6 shelters now, so we need everyone's support, whether it's professional talent at our office, whether it's team leaders and activity coordinators on site that you could work directly with the children, or it's our advocacy program as well as our sponsors. We're really looking for sponsors to be able to donate, corporate sponsors, small businesses, and even individuals.
So where would you direct people to go if they're interested in some of these opportunities?
Definitely to our website, Dare to Be NYC.
And that's Dare, numeral 2, letter B, dot.
Dare to Be, yeah,
So D-A-R-E, numeral 2, letter B,
NYC.org.
NYC.org. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Roxana, for coming in and telling us about this important work. And we'll look forward to having you back sometime.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. In the Me Too era, if men have received any attention in the discussion, it's been mostly about perpetrators. But what about when they're survivors? Of course, there have been some in the last year who've shared the hashtag and spoke about their experiences, but those narratives have been mostly on the margins because, of course, women have been disproportionately impacted. When you combine this lack of conversation space for men who've had experiences of sexual violence and a lack of a process for dealing with it, it can be problematic. This is what our next guest seeks to address in his new book called No Jewels. He's a poet, a singer-songwriter, and a Brooklynite. Welcome, Tai Allen, to 112BK.
Thank you, sir.
So tell me, what inspired you to write this book?
It wasn't actually me. One of my elders, I had a book deal last year, and one of my elders, Patricia Spears Jones, read part of the manuscript. And one of the poems, 9.5, was in that manuscript. And she suggested I turn that into a larger story, because there seems to be a lack of story about men who have dealt with trauma in a positive way. I wasn't interested at all. It took me about a month to convince me to even do it.
So that poem, 9.5, does that refer to an age of
Age and size.
Age,
right.
Age and size.
It's kind of a play on the word.
And
Double entendre.
what was that poem? Talk to me about that poem.
So basically about a young person who is being abused by an older female, and the 9.5 being the age of a 9-year-old, and the 9.5 being obviously inches, length type thing. So there's a sexual reference while at the same time age reference.
And that child was you?
Actually, no.
It wasn't? Huh.
Actually, what was interesting about the story, I did personalize parts of it. There are parts of it that are about me.
All right.
But I wanted it to be a level of universality. So I would interview 10 people I know who had similar situations. And I pulled their stories into one. So I can reach more than just my context, but the context of other men.
I see.
Got to be other information, other stories besides my own. So.
Well, can we talk about your experience?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so that kind of was the inspiration for at least beginning this investigation, I guess, right? Was your own personal experience?
No, it really was Patricia.
Oh, okay. I mean, but in the 9.5 poem.
No, that was actually a conversation of a friend who passed away.
I see.
He never got a chance to tell his story.
Okay.
And I actually turned that into a poem.
Huh. Okay. Well, so the title No Jewels, what does that refer to?
Well, I don't have an answer for everyone. And there's also another double entendre. The whole book is full of symbolism. I'm a former 5%er, and the idea of jewels or information or
Former 5%er.
Muslim,
Okay.
the sect of Islam. It was a way of referencing that, because jewels means information, it means facts, it means a thought process or analyzing something and coming away with something positive or even negative. I felt in this case, I really can't tell people how to change or find a process, but I can suggest if you have a trauma, coming out of it is as important as the trauma. Emergence is even more important than the trauma, let's say that. So there was no answers, but there definitely is, here the one jewel is trying something to make better for yourself.
Right, so it's sort of, I mean, and who would you say is the target audience for the book?
Initially men, black men, men in general, and then anyone with trauma, because the story isn't encapsulated just to men or black men. It's that we're so many people walking out here who need therapy, who need a hug, who need someone to talk to. And I was hoping that this book can start that conversation for others. And I see that it has. I was in Indiana, a young lady literally came up to me afterwards and told me I was telling her story. And I ended up helping her get therapy.
Wow.
Happened at a session in Pratt. I was teaching a class, and the question the young lady was asking me was clearly a call for help, that we're able to find the help she needed at Pratt. So it's opening up doors for people. That's good.
And so then you talk about that, and I read that you know, a lot of men walk around, they need a hug, but those aren't readily available necessarily. Men don't necessarily accept or seek out hugs.
Funny, I don't take hugs. So.
You don't take hugs either, but you recommend them for others.
Right, so other people, right.
But what about that? I mean, what about the fact that men, in the way we're socialized, you know, that we're not huggers?
Cowboy syndrome. I mean, it really comes down to that. The cowboy syndrome of super tough, super masculine. But then super masculine, super tough isn't a toxic situation. It's the application of it.
Right.
If you constantly tell yourself you can't be something other than super masculine, super tough, and you start to embody it in the negative ways, and those negative ways become the normal. It's better yet, consistent chaos. If you say consistent chaos, you start to believe that it's the right thing.
Kind of like someone occupying the Oval Office right now?
I'm trying to have an idea you're talking about. I don't mention his name on purpose.
I try not to.
But it's very similar in that you're normalizing something that's not normal, or not regular, I should say. But then more ways develop your normality. So we're told you have to be individualist, you have to have the bootstrap mentality, rough and rugged, and then having an emotion is negative. When something happens to you that requires an emotion to deal with, because something traumatic happens to you, your emotions are there actually to help you get through the negative.
To experience it, to feel it, and not to bury it.
Because I think I'm a stoic, 100% a stoic. But I'm a stoic because I actually let an emotion happen. It's my application of that emotion.
Some might think that is a contradiction, right?
Not
if you're
really.
stoic, that you're suppressing things, that nothing's on the surface.
But then that creates sickness, creates bad skin, creates wrinkles. I'm not really into that.
But I notice you don't have any wrinkles.
And I'm old enough to have more than wrinkles.
I got a lot of wrinkles. I don't know if that's because maybe I bottle a lot up.
But see, that could be, could be that. Are you still a lot? No, I'm just kidding. So by having a concept that emotions have to happen, but it's execution of that emotion. Because I'm feeling the emotion doesn't mean I'm bawling because I'm feeling sad, or I'm running through the lilies because I'm happy. I'm accepting the emotion, then moving on, because emotions are fleeting.
So you had an experience where you were a survivor of sexual abuse, sexual violence, right? But when you started down this road, I think I saw you'd been interviewed where you said that you didn't feel like you needed a catharsis. You didn't feel like you needed more healing because you had already gone through that process. Did you discover something else as you got into the process, that there was still some residue?
Well, no, actually. I think I had the luxury of having, I'm a, what do you call a black power baby? My mother was SCLC, my father was a black militant. So the information they give me to deal with white supremacy is the same information and tools you can use for any kind of oppression or any kind of violence against you. So I use that kind of thinking. One, what's my part in this? Two, how do I find calm in it? And three, how do I deal or excise the problem that was affecting me? I did all three, and I'm happy to have parents who actually didn't even realize they were building tools that I can use in other areas. I didn't realize that the tools were. I mean, when you're a kid, your parents tell you, study this and do that. You kind of go, yeah. Then you realize later on, wow, those tools are really effective. Parents really know.
So this book isn't, an explicit guide, how to access those tools that you were able to access
Right.
because of your parents, yet it is speaking to individuals to help them with their own healing process?
Yes.
In what way?
One, to think that you actually have a problem. That's the first thing that's big on the table. That's the initial problem, that we don't know there's a problem.
Right.
Second is to not accept the problem as an end result. Third, find a way to believe that you need both self-love and self-care, which are two different things.
Right.
Self-love is appreciation, admiration, adoration. Self-care is actually applying that to something real. So if you have diabetes, you love yourself to stay alive, so you take your medicine. That's self-love. Self-care is also changing your diet, cutting out alcohol, not smoking, going for a run, seeing your doctor on time. So the combination of those two things create a process. Everyone's process is different. One diabetes candidate may just need to go exercise. Another one may need a wholesale change of how they live, maybe even need to be an amputee of some sort. All these things are different for each one is individualized.
Right.
So we have to figure out what that is. But the first step is really, there was a problem, I need to fix this problem, and maybe find solutions and processes.
Right.
I don't think you find a process on your own, though.
And this will help enable that. Can you share, you have a little, a poem that you want to share with us?
Actually, the last poem, I think, is the most important one to me. That's why I have it on the back of the book.
All right.
Because I'm a nerd, I littered the book with poetry in different places.
That's great.
But the title of the poem is No Jewels, and I've never read it before, so if I mess up, it's your fault.
Okay. We'll edit it. Go ahead.
Basically. Nothing to offer but remembers without wise of a fall I raked, bagged and placed on the curb, cliche close to the cans waiting for trash day. Yeah, it's not so bad.
That's it.
Yeah, it's real simple.
Okay. And so great. And so the book has been out now for under a year, right?
Yes.
Came out in the
Oh,
fall?
it was a pre-release in the summer and then full release in the winter.
Where can people find it?
Anywhere from Barnes & Nobles to Amazon to my back pocket to shows.
Okay.
So,
And also maybe Greenlight Bookstore?
not yet. Actually, we did the first digital executions first.
Okay.
And I'm on tour. So it's been really great to having the book in different distributions like Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, and Kettle.
Okay.
And that's led to really great sales and me getting this national tour I'm on now. The next step was this spring and summer to kind of do a large regional physical push. And I'm actually about to go back and work on a whole new book. And the cool thing about this, we soundtrack the book.
Oh, right.
So you can get a whole level of
Sure.
music that attaches to it. That actually, if you read along while playing, the songs continue with the idea of emergence. It was done on purpose.
Oh, that's great.
So it moves.
I did listen to some of the songs, and they were great, so I recommend
cool.
it.
Thank you.
And you just want to mention a website if people want to go and find out more?
So simply TaiAllen.com. From there, you can go to any other distribution levels, from Tuttle to Barnes & Nobles.
Right. So those listening and not watching, Tai, spelled T-A-I.
TaiAllen.com. And if you're really nice to me, leave a message. We'll send you the special book and special link that gets you a discount. So.
Great. Well, Tai Allen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, sir.
Glad to
Appreciate
have you
it.
back soon. Thanks. So that's the show for today. Thanks for joining us. Tomorrow, Jarrett Murphy will be back to talk politics with members of two organizations that affiliate with the Working Families Party. We'll hear about their latest endorsement and the fallout, and a conversation with a local journalist who connects the recent police killing in Crown Heights to fears of gentrification. Hope you can join us.